A building permit, issued in good faith, can legally survive the building it approved. A building permit is an official approval issued before construction begins, confirming that a proposed project meets local safety codes. On paper, this is perfectly reasonable. Fires, leaks, structural collapse. Permits exist to prevent all of these. In Los Angeles County, a permit can only be issued to a licensed contractor, a property owner, or an authorized agent. Not a neighbor, not a well-meaning friend with a drill. The system has opinions about who qualifies before a single brick moves. Permits are required for most structural, electrical, and plumbing work. Move a load-bearing wall? Permit. Rewire a panel? Permit. Replace a sewer line? Permit. The list is not short. The process is also not short. Here's where the audit begins. A 2022 Brookings Institution analysis of municipal permitting found no performance metric in any surveyed jurisdiction that rewarded reviewers for approval speed. There's no bonus for a fast yes. There is, however, a clear consequence for a bad one, and that asymmetry quietly shapes everything that follows. When something goes wrong on a permitted project, the approving official is on record. Their name is on the stamp. So the rational response, not the malicious one, the rational one, is to add another review step, then another, then a committee to review the committee. Austin, Texas documented this directly. Between 2010 and 2020, the city's residential permit review process grew from 7 required sign-offs to 14, with no corresponding drop in error rates. Baltimore offers a concrete illustration. An erroneously issued building permit, one containing a setback error, triggered protracted legal proceedings. A setback is the required minimum distance between a structure and a property line. One wrong number, years of litigation. When a project can't meet the standard code, say the setback requirement, an applicant can request a variance. A variance is a formal documented exception. It requires its own application, its own review, and its own approval. The process has a process. Here's a detail the system rarely advertises. Permits expire. If construction doesn't progress within a defined window after approval, the permit lapses. You may then need to reapply to the same office for the same project through the same process. Which brings us back to the opening image. A permit issued for a building that is later condemned, demolished, or abandoned does not automatically void itself. The paperwork persists. The building sometimes does not. A building permit does not stop the condemnation process. If a structure is deemed unsafe, local authorities can condemn it regardless of what permits are on file. The permit approves construction. It does not guarantee the result. Compliance isn't a fixed destination. Building codes update regularly. A structure permitted and built in 1987 to 1987 code may not meet 2024 code. The permit was valid. The building is now technically out of compliance. The system has moved on without it. What if someone skips the permit entirely? The consequences aren't theoretical. Unpermitted work can trigger steep fines, forced demolition of completed structures, and, critically, voided homeowners insurance. The system has teeth. They're just slow. Voided homeowners insurance is the consequence that lands hardest. A fire caused by unemitted electrical work may not be covered. The insurer checks the permit record. The permit record is public. The math, at that point, is straightforward and unpleasant. Permitting offices consistently advise starting the permit process during early planning, not after the design is finalized, not after the contractor is hired, early. This advice is correct. It's also, in practice, ignored until the project is already in motion. But the incentive problem surfaces again. The contractor gets paid to build. The designer gets paid to design. The permit office gets paid to review. Nobody in that chain gets paid to wait at the front of the queue and think carefully about sequencing. A 2019 audit of San Jose's development review process found that permit applications for residential projects were submitted after design completion in over 70% of cases, because no party in the contract chain bore a financial penalty for late submission. The U.S. House passed the SPEED Act to reform federal permitting rules, a signal that the problem is recognized at the legislative level. The bill's sponsors cited documented delays averaging 2 to 5 years for major infrastructure projects as the primary justification. The pattern holds across jurisdictions. Process accretes because no one is incentivized to remove it. Each added review step was added for a reason. Nobody has the authority or the career incentive to subtract one. A 2021 Mercatus Center study of state-level permitting found that the average number of required review stages had increased in 44 of 50 states over the prior 2 decades. 0 states reported a net reduction. The mechanism has a measurable output. When San Francisco's Department of Building Inspection added a mandatory third-party structural review requirement in 2016, average permit processing times increased by 63 days. The review was added after one high-profile approval error. No review step has been removed since. The pile grows in one direction. A counter-pressure is emerging. Technology like Archistar's e-check platform runs automated preliminary compliance reviews before a human reviewer opens the file. The goal is to front-load the obvious rejections so reviewers spend time on genuinely complex cases. Automation can cut processing time. It can't, on its own, change the underlying incentive. An automated system that flags an application still routes it to a human reviewer who faces the same asymmetric consequence. The technology is faster. The incentive is unchanged. The stakes become clearest in housing. Minneapolis issued permits for 3,019 residential units in 2022. Units approved in principle but stalled in the review queue. Every delayed permit is a delayed unit. Every delayed unit is a household on a waiting list that doesn't shorten. The permitting system was designed to ensure safe buildings. It was not designed to manage housing supply. It does both accidentally. The internal contradiction surfaces cleanly here. A city can condemn a building for being unsafe, regardless of its permit status. But that same city may require a new permit to demolish the condemned structure. In Chicago, the municipal code explicitly requires a demolition permit, a separate application, separate fee, separate review, before a condemned structure can be removed. You need a permit to remove the thing the permit failed to protect. And recall, permits expire. A property owner navigating condemnation, applying for a demolition permit, and managing a construction timeline is also tracking an expiration clock on every active permit simultaneously. The system generates its own complexity as a byproduct of its own rules. The Baltimore setback case is instructive not because it's extreme, but because it's routine. The litigation it triggered ran more than 4 years and cleared 3 separate appeals before a final ruling on the property boundary was issued. The error wasn't fraudulent, it was a number in the wrong column, and the cost of correcting it exceeded the assessed value of the parcel in dispute. Genuine permitting reform requires changing the incentive, not just the form. If an official is rewarded, or at minimum, not penalized, for a timely approval that meets code, the calculus shifts. New Zealand's 2021 Building Specified Systems, Change the Use, and Earthquake-Prone Buildings Amendment Act introduced exactly this mechanism. Reviewer performance is now evaluated on both approval time and compliance accuracy, weighted equally. Accountability must match the desired behavior, or the behavior won't change. For anyone navigating this system, the practical implication is this. Start the permit process before you think you need to. Not when the design is done, not when the contractor is hired. The system's timeline is not your timeline, and it won't apologize for the difference. For policymakers, the implication is less comfortable. Adding a new review requirement is always easier than removing an old one. Every existing step has a constituency, usually the office that runs it. Reform that doesn't address removal isn't reform. Singapore offers a direct contrast. Its Building and Construction Authority runs a concurrent review model. Structural, fire safety, and zoning checks proceed simultaneously rather than sequentially. The result: median permit approval time for residential projects is typically around 4 weeks. In Los Angeles, the same category of project averages over 90 days. Same safety objective, different process architecture, measurably different outcome. Which returns us to the opening image: a permit stapled to the door of a building that no longer qualifies for what the permit approved. The document is technically valid. The structure is technically condemned. The system sees no contradiction in this. There's a consequence of permit persistence that most buyers miss entirely. When a property changes hands, the permit record transfers with it. An open, uninspected permit from a renovation completed 20 years ago can block a sale, trigger a retroactive inspection, and require the new owner to bring the original work into current code compliance at their expense. California real estate attorneys rank this among the top 5 undisclosed liabilities in residential transactions. The permit outlasts the building. It also outlasts the original owner. Before you buy a property, request its full permit history from the local building department. Open permits, expired inspections, and unpermitted work are public record, and they become your liability the moment the deed transfers. The system's paperwork doesn't reset at closing. Check it before you sign. This audit is complete. The findings, as always, may be ignored.